What's up, everybody? Joe Brown here. This is the Heresy Financial Show, and today we are talking about the new layoff and jobless claims numbers that just came out. And specifically, we're going to focus on the unemployment piece of this, the layoffs portion, because this is confirming what I've been telling you for a couple of months, that layoffs have already started and they're only going to get worse. And by the time it shows up in the official data for the Fed, it will be much worse in reality than what they are able to see, just because their data is so backwards looking. So we're going to take a look at what is going on right now. Ready? Let's dive in. All right, take a look with me here at this article from CNBC. You can see that a report indicated companies announced 32,000 layoffs in June. And so that was an increase of 57% from 1 month ago. It was the highest total since February of 2021. Now, this data comes from a firm. It's a job placement firm, Challenger, Gray, and Christmas. Now, look, there are always layoffs happening. Even in the tightest labor markets, there are always going to be people who are losing their jobs. And so that is going to be a characteristic of any job market. So what you want to look at is the percentage change and to see if it is just normal, especially seasonally, if it's different per season, if it's different per industry. We take a look at the numbers here. We can see that the auto sector typically lays off this time of year, and they announced over 10,000 cuts. Yearly, they're up to 15,000, which is a 155% increase from the same period in 2021. And of the 30 industries that the company follows, 10 of them, so 1/3 of them, have announced more cuts this year than they had last year. Now, a while ago, when central banks were saying, hey, we need inflation and we just haven't been able to figure out how to cause inflation, so they kept rates low, they kept doing quantitative easing, printing money, buying assets, Christine Lagarde said, hey, well, yes, we might be causing some inflation and that might destroy your savings, but at least you have a job. Basically, they said, our goal is the only thing that matters, and be thankful for the drippings off the table, the crumbs that we give you. Well, now they're saying, hey, we're going to fight inflation. We are going to raise rates. We are going to sell assets off our balance sheet. We're going to make conditions much tighter and harder. And guess what? Yes, your job might be sacrificed as a result of it, but hey, at least inflation won't go up. So first they took away your savings with inflation and said, hey, at least you have a job, but now they're taking away your job after they gave you all that inflation. And so they're not your friend. They're not doing this in order to serve you, to save you. This is all to maintain their own power, because at the end of the day, if they don't do their job, which is given to them by Congress, which is stable prices and full employment, maximum employment, then they lose their job. They're replaced, or the Federal Reserve is wiped out and folded underneath the Treasury or something else put in its place. The Federal Reserve exists because of the Federal Reserve Act, because of Congress, and any day that can change. So at the end of the day, that's why they're doing what they're doing, not because of anything that you or I may actually need in our lives. But in any case, this highlights the relationship, the inverse relationship between inflation and employment, that if you make conditions really easy, there's a lot of money flowing around. So it stimulates artificial demand, which prompts new projects, which prompts fake growth, which prompts overemployment. And so you have overinvestment in industries and people feel rich for a while. And then that causes inflation, prices go up. And so to stop that inflation, you have rising rates, you have central banks selling assets off their balance sheet, making conditions tighter, which pushes downward pressure on everything because they're sucking liquidity out of the system. Now there's less money floating around, and now costs are being cut. Now more people want to save, more people are afraid of investing and spending, and companies will look to cut costs wherever they can because prices are going up everywhere. So if we can cut costs by firing some people, by laying some people off, we're going to do it. We're going to trim the fat. And employees are typically the largest cost of any business. And so if you are fat for a corporation, you're going to be that first lost weight. Now, take a look with me here because this is important. Markets are watching for the non-farm payrolls report, which as of the time of this recording hasn't come out, but by the time you're watching this report will have come out because there's a couple of days delay here. Now, take a look with me here because this is important. We are looking at the non-farm payrolls report because markets are watching for Friday's non-farm payroll reports. By the time you watch this video, it'll already be out. As of when I'm recording this, it's not out yet. This non-farm payrolls report is expected to show a gain of 250,000. So if that estimate is correct, it'll be the lowest monthly gain since December of 2020, and the Fed watches the jobs numbers closely. So this is what I've been talking about for so long. The main metrics that the Federal Reserve looks at to see what the impact is on the economy are extremely delayed. They're looking at non-farm payrolls. So by the time the official job numbers that they are looking at show the waves of unemployment, show the joblessness, show the economic pain, it will have gotten so severe that their reaction to it could potentially very easily tip us over into hyperinflation. Just like their reaction to the beginning of 2020 tipped everything over into high inflation. They said, oh no, there's a bunch of deflation. We need to stop it. We're going to throw trillions of dollars at the market. Well, that was an overreaction and it resulted in asset prices exploding, then the price of goods and services exploding. And now that they're afraid of inflation, they're overreacting to fight inflation. And there's this massive deflationary forces that are now hitting the economy. By the time they see the results of those massive deflationary forces, they're going to overreact. They're going to say, oh no, we have to stop that. And they're going to overreact the other way. But the thing about these things is that they compound on each other. That's why when we look at the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, the size of their balance sheet this whole time looked like basically zero to where it's at right now. The size of their balance sheet was at $800 billion up until the Great Financial Crisis. And then it exploded within just a short amount of time. It went to over 2 trillion. And then it kept on expanding and expanding and expanding, got up to 4 trillion here. And right before 2020, it was sitting here right around again that $4 trillion mark. And then it exploded again. It's now sitting at the $8 trillion mark. So in just a little over 10 years, we went from about 800 billion to 8 trillion. That's a 10x increase because it roughly doubled twice here. It went from 800 to 2 trillion and then to 4 trillion and then to 8 trillion. So it doubled a couple of times there. And so we're 10x more than we were before the financial crisis. Fast forward 10 years out from now, 12 years out from now, and you can see how severe this can get. Every time they overreact, they cause more and more problems that when they try and bail it out, it requires exponentially more intervention to stop. And that's why I think we only have one more of these cycles before everything collapses, like without recovery potential. Because what do you have to do to accomplish this? Well, this first time here, going from the balance sheet going from 800 billion up to 2 and then 4 trillion, what you had to do was basically bail out the financial system. You bought treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. That was basically it. That was a lot of what they were doing during this amount of time. The next time they needed a bailout here during 2020, they bought mortgage-backed securities and treasuries, but they also bought corporate bonds, not on this balance sheet, but through the treasury. They also did universal basic income for a little bit with stimulus checks, child tax credit checks. They also did things like corporate welfare. They also did things like the Paycheck Protection Program. There are all sorts of programs that were funded through a coordination of fiscal and monetary policy, government spending, the central bank funding it, monetizing it. So with that coordination, there was a lot more intervention this time than there was last time, which means that the next time we get the collapse, this deflationary collapse that I think is happening this year, the intervention that will be required to stop it once they finally decide it's time to stop it will be many times more than what they started in 2020. They're not going to be able to stop the crash by just cutting some stimulus checks, by just lowering interest rates, by just buying some assets onto their balance sheet. They're going to have to do way more than that. They're going to have to do actual universal basic income. Let's say $2,000 every single month for every single person, adult or child. They're going to have to do things like outright yield curve control, because they won't just be able to keep yields down by pegging the Fed funds rate at zero. They're going to have to peg the 10-year and the 30-year to zero to give the government the ability to finance as much spending as they want. They're going to have to do all sorts of things in order to accomplish the next bailout that there's really nothing past that. This is the next time around. They're going to use all the cards in their deck. They're going to use all of their aces, everything that they have. And ultimately what that will do is spill everything over into hyperinflation and collapse the currency. But before we get there, we do have economic pain, depression, crash, deflationary, death spiral type stuff happening before we get there. And that's what I anticipate for the next couple of months, the deflation throughout the rest of this year. And once things get hard enough with a CBDC and yield curve control and UBI, we're going to have all of the intervention that will tip us over the other way. Hope that makes sense. As always, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.